road home wasn't lit by streetlights. It was lit by memory, the kind that hovers in the corners of your mind, familiar but fading like smoke through trees. Justice Regina Cole had driven this route from Milledgeville to Perry for years. Since, long before her appointment, before DC, before the headlines, back when she was just Reggie to her friends, back when Marvin still held her hand on Sunday drives. But Marvin was gone now, and the pines on either side of Route 247 whispered in his place. Regina, 73, didn't like driving at night anymore. Her eyes, once sharp enough to pick apart federal arguments, now strained at passing signs. But this road felt like home, a little crooked, a little slow, but honest. The breeze kissed her cheek through the cracked window. On the passenger seat, a covered plate of smothered pork chops and peach cobbler from her sister's kitchen, wrapped in care, wrapped in love, wrapped like she was still someone to be taken care of. "You need to eat more," Etta had said, tapping Regina's wrist. "You're wasting away sitting behind all them books." Regina had smiled, polite, reserved, tired in the bones, not just from age, but from knowing what. The world still saw when they looked at her. She adjusted the rearview mirror. That's when she saw it. Headlights, bright, too close. A large SUV, government plate, sheriff's logo just barely visible through the dust. She slowed a little, wasn't speeding, wasn't drifting, but the lights pulsed blue before she could reach the next mile marker. No siren, just authority. "Regina," Cole signaled, pulled over, rolled her window down halfway. Old habit, old training, old trauma. She moved slow, left hand on the wheel, right hand setting her purse on her lap. Two visible hands, calm breath, open eyes. She used to teach this to law students. Now, she lived it. The officer didn't approach right away. Instead, he sat in his cruiser like he was collecting himself, like he was waiting to see if she'd make the first mistake. Eventually, the door creaked open. He was young, maybe mid-30s, white, with a tight jaw and a buzz cut that looked fresh that morning. He walked like power, like the badge gave him permission to press down harder. No greeting, no license check, just step out of the vehicle. Regina didn't move. Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake. "Am I being detained, officer?" He didn't like that. "Don't play games." Out of the car. Now. Her hands stayed where they were. "May I ask the reason for the stop?" He leaned down, his breath fogging the glass. "You were swerving. Been drinking tonight, ma'am?" Regina blinked slowly. "Not in the last 30 years. He looked unconvinced. "Got any weapons or drugs in the vehicle?" She shook her head. "No, sir." He stared. Not at her. Through her. "Let me see your license." She motioned gently to her purse. "My ID is inside this bag. May I retrieve it?" His hand jumped to his hip. "Keep your hands on the wheel. You fit a description." The words hit like slaps, not new ones, just familiar, worn out and passed down. Like old shoes, descriptions, always vague, always just enough to become a reason. Regina Cole, Supreme Court Justice, sat there in a cotton blouse and slacks with a ribbon still pinned to her collar from her husband's funeral. And this man? He saw a suspect. He walked around the car, circling like a predator in training, pausing just long enough to imagine her bending, braking, running. She didn't move. She watched the mirror, watched the trees sway, watched the wind carry the silence. He came back around. "Where you headed from?" "My sister's house in Milledgeville." "This late?" "We had dinner." "Funny. This is a bad stretch for criminals, you know." He smirked. She didn't return it. "Pop the trunk." She turned slowly. "Is there probable cause for a search, officer?" The shift was instant. That phrase wasn't supposed to leave her mouth. Not from someone he thought he could control. Not from someone like her. He stepped back, didn't answer. He wasn't trained for this. He was trained to escalate, to demand, to win. But she wasn't here to play. She was here to go home. Then, he tried the door handle, locked. You locking me out now? No, officer, I never unlocked it to begin with. The temperature dropped, but the sweat under her blouse clung tighter. This was no longer about a traffic stop. This was about power, about discomfort, about the way some men need to feel taller than the truth. He walked back to his cruiser, faster this time, fumbling. She could hear the radio, couldn't make out the words, but she heard her name become the vehicle. He stopped calling her Mom. Now she was non-compliant. Now she was possibly armed. Now she was a file being built. She kept her hands on the wheel. The clock on the dash blinked 9:17. Still no other cars. Still no sign of help. Just the sound of her own heart, whispering a rhythm she'd memorized in courtrooms and now repeated. Here, stay calm, stay measured, stay alive. And then he returned, clipboard in hand and a new energy in his step. You're being detained. On what grounds? He faltered. Step out of the car. Are you arresting me? Just step out. Regina didn't argue. She took her purse, pulled out her ID case, slid it into her coat pocket, moved like every motion was being filmed, because maybe it was. She stepped onto the gravel shoulder. No cane, no coat, no shield, just 73 years of experience pressing into her knees. He barked orders, made her stand. At the front of the car, face forward. Don't turn, don't ask questions. She did exactly that, but her silence, it spoke, it unsettled. She stood in the glare of her own headlights, the heat of them pressing on her back like interrogation lamps. Regina Cole did not tremble, did not cry, did not fold, but something inside her shifted. Something sharp, something righteous, something earned. The deputy paced behind her, kicking gravel as he spoke into his shoulder mic, louder this time. Words like non-compliant, resisting, need backup. It was choreography, a performance for no audience but the dark. He pulled a flashlight and shone it directly at her eyes. Looked straight ahead. She didn't flinch, she didn't wince. Have you been drinking? No. Drugs? No. Why are you being so difficult? Her voice was still smooth, steady. Southern, following the law isn't being difficult. He circled her again, stopping near the open driver's side door. Without asking, he reached into the glove box. You do not have consent to search. He paused, half crouched, half guilty. And for the first time, his expression cracked. I have reasonable suspicion. She turned, then sight it. There it was again, that calm defiance, that gentle demand for order, like a gavel wrapped in silk. The officer, Kessler, she now read on the badge, stood fully upright. Ma'am, I need to know who you are. You're acting evasive. Her hand moved slowly to her coat pocket, then read it. She extended the slim leather case. He took it, and everything stopped. There, beneath the moonlight, in the middle of a rural Georgia road, Officer Brandon Kessler stared at credentials that made his breath hitch in his throat. Justice Regina L. Cole, Associate Justice, Supreme Court of the United States. He blinked once, twice. Yes, she said. You're on the Supreme. I am. Her voice didn't rise, didn't need to. The truth had already filled the space between them like thunder. His shoulders dropped half an inch, his fingers loosened. The clipboard he had clutched began to shake, just slightly. Ma'am, I didn't realize. Would it have mattered? She asked it gently, and he didn't answer. Couldn't, because they both knew it wouldn't have. Because her power didn't fit the image in his head. Because he hadn't stopped a justice tonight. He'd stopped a woman in an old car with silver hair and dark skin. He handed the ID back with both hands now, like it was holy. Like touching it wrong might cost him everything. This was routine, he stammered. Standard check. No, officer, it was not. That was all she said, and that was all she needed to say. He stepped back, trying to recover, trying to regroup. It's been a long shift. I didn't mean, but your actions had meaning. Another beat of silence. Ma'am, I deeply apologize. If there's anything I can... She raised a hand. Do not try to fix this with niceties. He swallowed hard. Her words were steel, wrapped in grace. I'm not filing a report, she said after a pause. He blinked in disbelief. You're not. Not because you deserve leniency, she added, but because sometimes the most lasting lessons come when no one else is watching. And then she walked to the car, graceful, composed, more dignified than any man who'd ever raised his voice at her. She opened the door, sat down, took a breath. He stood behind her, helpless. You'll remember this night, she said, not. Looking back, I hope it makes you better. And then she drove off. The taillights disappeared into the dark, but her presence lingered like a siren in his chest. Officer Kessler stood there long after she was gone, arms limp, mind racing. No one had passed by the entire time. No one had seen it but him, but that didn't make it feel any less loud. Justice Regina Cole didn't mention the incident, not that night, not the next morning when her sister-in-law called to ask about the peach cobbler, not even when her clerk checked in about the hearing briefs. She filed it somewhere quiet, private, but not forgotten, because what happened on that road wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a reflection. One she'd seen in too many faces, too many courtrooms, too many shattered testimonies. So she did what she'd always done. She turned the wound into wisdom. That Sunday, Pastor Lovett called. We're doing a community reflection after service. Next week, nothing big, just truth-telling. You'd be perfect for it. She paused. I'm not sure I'm in the mood to inspire. You don't have to inspire, he said. Just remind us what's worth remembering. She agreed, quietly, without fanfare. The next week, the pews of Macedonia Chapel filled with worn Bibles and older voices, mothers in wide hats, men with calloused hands and pressed slacks, teens side-eyeing phones they weren't allowed to use. When Pastor Lovett introduced her, it was brief. Justice Regina Cole has agreed to speak. Let's listen. She walked to the pulpit without notes, without script, just memory. A few nights ago I was pulled over. A murmur, a shifting of legs. Not for speeding, not for reckless driving, just for driving while looking like me. Gasps. The officer didn't ask who I was, didn't check my license. He asked about drugs, demanded I step out, refused to listen. She scanned the crowd, steady, unsentimental. He saw a threat before he saw a person, because sometimes a badge becomes a blindfold. The congregation was frozen. He didn't know my name, and that's the point. This wasn't about me, it was about the next girl on that same road, the next boy in the wrong hoodie, the next driver with trembling hands. A few in the back stood silently, not in protest, but in reverence. I wasn't angry that night, I was heartbroken, because if I, a sitting Supreme Court justice, can be treated like that, what happens to those without a title? She paused. But I didn't raise my voice. I showed him a mirror, and I pray truly that he saw himself. The church stayed still, no shouting, no stomping, just a silence deep enough to be called holy. Afterward, people hugged her, no long speeches, just long embraces. Thank you for saying it. You made me feel seen. My nephew needed to hear that. One young girl, 15, maybe, whispered, I want to be a judge too. Regina smiled. Then be better than me. Start now. Meanwhile, across town, Officer Kessler hadn't spoken a word of what happened, not to his supervisor, not to his wife, but something changed. He started his shift slower, didn't reach for his belt so quickly. He looked longer at every ID, and sometimes, when no one was watching, he replayed her voice in his mind. Would it have mattered if you knew? Weeks passed, no media coverage, no viral videos, just ripples, stories told in barbershops, whispers in classrooms, judgment behind counters. They called it the night she didn't raise her voice, and everyone knew what that meant, even if they didn't know her name. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived at her office. No return address. Inside, a single line, handwritten, "I remember everything you said. I'm trying to be better." She folded it gently, tucked it into her desk, didn't respond, didn't need to, because the echo of her restraint was louder than any accusation. Months later, at a community event, a young officer asked Kessler, "What's the most important lesson you've learned on the job?" He stared down for a long time, then answered, "Listen carefully to the quiet ones. They're usually the ones holding truth." Regina Cole never told that story again, not because she forgot, but because others wouldn't. Not because it wasn't hers, but because now it belonged to everyone who'd ever been unseen. Because justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it wears silence, and sometimes silence speaks louder than sirens.